I didn't really know what I wanted to talk about, but one of the things I wanted to talk a little bit about, which probably no one cares, was business jargon. Because I caught one recently. I've heard people say before, like, let's double click in this or let's double click on this, which just means like, let's take a closer look. And that's okay. But then I heard somebody recently say triple click. And this just kills me. Like, how many clicks are we going to get to? And then I stumbled on an Instagram account because the algorithm, like I said last time, it's got me. And it was like something about just like joke business jargon we should try to like make commonplace. And one of them was like, we're going to have to just slurp that noodle. And I guess they meant it to mean like something wasn't going to be pretty, but we just have to do it anyway. Oh, man. And I just want to work these into meetings and just try and say them and see who catches them. One of my favorite phrases. Wow. Anyway, never mind. Not important, but I just got me laughing today, which was good. It was a pretty solid day. I woke up, coached the 5:30 and 6:30 a.m. classes down at good old CrossFit Mafia. They smashed it. Mafia had a massive day. I think they said they had 103 athletes come through the doors today to do the workout, which is a record for them. So amazing work. The Kincaids who own Mafia and all the coaches there and all the members who went in and did a workout, which I think we follow CrossFit affiliate programming at Mafia. And I think this week, Denise Thomas, coach extraordinaire, is the one to blame for these workouts. And today's workout was, I already put it out of my mind because I did it and it was tough. 500 meter row, 30 toes to bars, 30 overhead squats, 115 pounds and 80 pounds for ladies, and then 500 meter row. So fast workout, some heavy overhead squat strength piece-ish and practice beforehand. This is a really nice little workout. So coached the classes, and then 7:30 a.m. I did that workout with a couple other people, which was really fun. And that was really it for the day. And then went to work. But before that happened, I got the chance to kind of chat with somebody today, and what we were talking about was kind of this podcast and, the thought behind it and what it's intended to do. Right now, just nothing. But what we were talking about is, one, it got me thinking of whether or not I'm a positive person. And then two, just like with all the self-help craziness out there, which I don't want this to be, but I think it's kind of a good thing for me to share, at least for me, as far as like, what do I think throughout the day and how do I deal with and navigate just kind of like the minor peaks and troughs of the day. But am I a positive person? This was like an interesting thing for me to think about because I don't know if I'm a positive person, but I'm definitely somebody who, when I get my head out of my own ass, I just really like all of the nuances of the world, and I like the not knowing, and I like the path and the journey, and not having like the perfect idea of what happens next, and the possibility of life and all the things that can happen in it. And I'm just always find so interesting how it all got here, and how it all works, and how it all comes together. And I do find like a big appreciation for that. So I don't know if I'm a positive person, but and we've talked about this before, is I do really try to latch on to, I don't know, like that childlike wonder, just being fascinated by how things work, trying not to take everything for granted. And I do think you just find, at least for me, I find a lot of joy in that. And I don't necessarily know if that's positivity. I'm certainly able to realistically evaluate a situation that's not going too well, in a lot of different ways. And I think everybody has their own, but I'm also always trying to look for like, what is unique about this situation that hasn't happened before? Or how am I someone who uniquely fits in this situation? And if I don't, it's probably a new one that I'm having, which I think is really cool. So I don't know if I don't know. I'd like to think of myself as positive in that way. Just not like positive in like the way of like, I don't want to fake it. I don't want to be fake positive. But damn, do I love the adventure. That hasn't changed. There have definitely been times in my life where I've taken myself way too seriously and like thought that was the thing to do. But I feel like I've gotten back to the right space. So that was an interesting one. What was the other thing? So But how do you remember it all? The self-help stuff. And I don't know. There is so much out there. But again, when I see that, there's part of me that's like, there's so much out there. We prescribe everything. We label everything. We define everything. Everything has a term. I'm listening to this book right now. It's All Right, by Jonathan Haidt, social psychologist. He wrote this book a couple years ago called The Coddling of the American Mind. And he's got this whole thing about safetyism or something like that. And that's like a term, safetyism. Just another ism. I just think sometimes I think that's weird. And on top of just the wonder thing and knowing, I think it's also nice to be able to look at a thing and observe it and watch it happen, but then just kind of be like, that's really interesting. And not have to like unpack it or dissect it or label it or define it or describe it any more than that. Just kind of like experience it. I think that's a really important thing. How do you remember it all? I think you just try to remember enough that is valuable to you and what you do and keeps you moving forward for the things you want to move forward for. And, like one of the things I've talked about before, and because everyone else who has access to cold water and a mouth to talk about it with, the cold shower, cold plunge thing, I've talked about this before. I just like it because I feel better. And some people look at that idea and they totally like flinch and cringe and they think it's disgusting. And I think it's fantastic. Have your own thing. We talked about this with the Back on Track. I talked about this with my wife, and her Back on Track is totally different. It's a shower that is so damn hot it burns your skin off. I call it lava showers. I don't understand why anybody in their right mind would do it, but she loves it. And that's, I guess, all that really matters. So those are a couple of things we talked about. What other books am I reading? I'm also reading and listening to Robert Sapolsky. He's like a academic neuroscientist. It's a book called Behave. It's a really cool book. All kinds of little factoids about how our behavior develops and how we interact with the world and the world interacts with us. It's also maddeningly unhelpful because you dig into this book and you're like, sweet, I'm finally going to get the answer to the nature versus nurture discussion. And the more you get into the book, you just realize there's no answer to it. And it's very complicated and confusing, which for our desire for a neat little worldview is a major pain in the ass when you read a book like that. But I think in some way it also takes the pressure off, because if the answer is not super clear for the genius scientists, I don't have to get it right. That's a relief. What do we want to chat about? A couple minutes left. Someone did give the feedback today. They said the only thing that would be better than a 10-minute podcast would be a 15-minute podcast, and he might be an audience of one. But I appreciate him nonetheless a lot. It was a very nice thing to say, I thought. So maybe we'll get there. I wanted to talk about the perfect moment, and I'm going to try and keep this under 3 minutes. We touched on this a couple times, and I think this maybe goes back to just like being able to find the wonder of an event, or just like the serendipity of not knowing what's going to happen, and kind of been leading up and talking about being present in the moment. The perfect moment is not about a moment that is perfect, but the perfect moment is really just kind of like about a snapshot in time where you are present enough to notice all of the things that you truly appreciate about a moment. And sometimes, the context around the perfect moment is utter chaos. And I can think a couple times when this was happening. One time I was walking my dog, and it was actually like super noisy outside. We were near a roadway, and it was getting to be dusk. And he was just having a good time playing, running up to me, kind of would like run up behind me, circle around, and just being super playful. And then, he kind of just walked up to me, sat down at my feet, and I sat down next to him, and he's just looking up at me. And it was cool because it was this really calm moment. And like, it's starting to get to be dusk, and the day has cooled off, and the grass is really soft. And aside from like how noisy it is around and how imperfect everything is, there is just this really special moment that you get to capture. And I think what's interesting is I don't try and like seek out these perfect moments each day. Like, I got to go find my perfect moment. But instead, what I've tried to do is like when I start to feel that perfect moment, you know, it's funny because my knee-jerk reaction always like, I got to take out my phone and take a picture of this, or record it or write it down. When I start to feel like this is some moment that is just like, for whatever reason, even if it is like from the outside looking in relatively mundane, very special, I just try and stop and like think about my senses, and I try and smell it and close my eyes and remember it and what am I hearing and who is there. And it's a really cool thing because it is like when you step out of it immediately after, you're like, well, that moment sure as shit wasn't perfect. But man, being in the moment was pretty amazing. And I think all of the ones I've had, I've remembered really well. So that's the perfect moment. There's a lot to talk about there. But you know these throughout the day when you have them. And if you can just kind of pull the e-brake and pause and feel them and think about them and just like sit down and be like, what is it like to try to remember this? They're really special. So see you tomorrow.